die! Please die first! Let's see how much damage this does. Boom! People are talking about Dark Souls 3 again, and what I keep hearing is Dark Souls 3 has FromSoftware's best bosses, and if you don't agree, you're dead wrong, because that's how internet discourse works. I remember DS3 being my favorite of the Dark Souls trilogy and having mostly great bosses, but that was over half a decade ago. So I gave Dark Souls 3 a quick playthrough over on Twitch to see if these bosses still live up to my memory, and also how they compare to Elden Ring's bosses, which I think are some of the most fun bosses FromSoft has ever made. So let's start at the beginning, with everybody's favorite sludge monsters stuffed into a suit of armor, Iudex Gundyr. This is definitely one of those that looks way more intimidating than he actually is, especially in Phase 2, once he explodes out of his tin can. The reality is, he has low HP, doesn't do all that much damage, and provides more than enough time to heal. If you stay close and keep circling, there's really not all that much he can do. If I had to compare him to an Elden Ring boss, I'd say he's kind of like a depowered Nile in Phase 1 that has half an ulcerated tree serpent pop out of his torso in Phase 2. If you understood what I just said, you're definitely in the right place, my friend, and you should consider subscribing. Overall, I give Iudex Gundyr 3 exploding cans of biscuit dough out of 5. Alright, there we go. Moving on to Vordt of the... What even is this guy? If he's a humanoid creature, I'm very confused by his proportions and movement. Anyways, Vordt is almost difficult to get hit by in Phase 1, if you just stay under him. It's shocking how small his hitboxes are, then it's the exact opposite in Phase 2. He suddenly becomes all hitbox, which is when I remembered something about Dark Souls 3 that in my opinion was changed for the better in Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, for the most part, if you dodge the weapon, you don't take damage, which I think makes learning bosses fun and rewarding, especially because Elden Ring bosses generally have more complex movesets. In Dark Souls 3, there are less attacks to learn, but sometimes you have to be more precise because you can dodge the weapon but get brushed by a forearm or a hip or a heel or a butt and take a small amount of chip damage. This wouldn't be too bad if it didn't also stun you for a split second, likely interrupting your follow-up attack because there's no player poise system in Dark Souls 3, which in many cases will get you hit by the boss's next attack. This is probably more realistic, but not necessarily more fun, which is probably why FromSoft moved away from this system. If a boss like Malekith played by DS3 rules, he would be insanely difficult compared to his current form. Anyways, back to Vordt, he's fine. Not too hard, but also not too fun. Let's give him 3 Sekiro Bulls out of 5. The next two are kind of bad gimmick bosses. There's a tree where you have to pop some zits and a disappearing crystal sage, both far more annoying than difficult. The quality of bosses picks up greatly after these guys, so let's move fast. The tree feels like a Star Fox 64 boss where you have to hit the glowing areas, but the reward is good, so it's worth doing. The second is essentially whack-a-mole. It's about as exciting as it sounds. I'll give them both 2 outdated designs out of 5. There we go. The Abyss Watchers, finally a good boss. In fact, the first really good boss of the game. The boss has a fun moveset to start and a unique mechanic where duplicate bosses rise from death to fight you and each other. When you take the first health bar down, you get to fight a single souped-up version of a Phase 1 Watcher with a nice progression of the original moveset. This boss can be easily interrupted and stun-locked at times, and can also be backstabbed like human enemies. There are moments where the boss will surprise you with hyper armor, going right through your attacks to do some damage, but that's a pretty common issue with some of FromSoftware's best bosses, so I can't complain too much. If I had to compare it to an Elden Ring boss, I'd say the best possible version of Fia's Champions. That's not a dig, this is fun. I'll give it 4 of Fia's Hugs out of 5. That's so... Oh, see, I should have started another combo right there. I think we got him. Yep. Alright, that's a fun fight. I like it. Oh, Deacons of the Deep. I forgot about them because they're very forgettable. It's just a bunch of dudes. You hit the important dude and don't have to fight the rest of the dudes. Like the boss that's just a bunch of rats from DS2. At least there, the important rat has a mohawk though, which is definitely something. Overall, I'll give them 1 Spirit Snail out of 5. And Wolnir. Wow, the first half is not the top to bottom quality everyone remembers. Wolnir is annoying. You have to hit his bracelets, which damages him a lot for reasons. but he moves his wrists often, sometimes clipping them through the floor where you can't hit them. And it's dark, and he might fart death at you, or spawn skeletons, which are more annoying than dangerous. This boss is so bad, he got downgraded to being a spirit summon for one of Elden Ring's worst bosses. I'll give him 1 Tibia Mariner out of 5. That's so aggravating. Thank you, Pontiff Sulyvahn, for saving us from mediocrity. He's got a tough but fun moveset, he's highly aggressive but will let you heal. In Phase 2, he can summon a dark clone that attacks just before the real Pontiff does. He does have a pretty big exploit that balances the difficulty of the fight really nicely though, and that is that Sully just can't handle the parry. He gives you the same opening attack every time, which lets you do big damage from the jump. His clone can even be used to see what the Pontiff's next attack will be to line up another big parry. Overall, this one is a blast and would be right at home in Elden Ring due to the moveset, weakness to the parry, and occasionally having to fight 2 of them. I'll give the good Pontiff 4 Crucible Knights out of 5. No! Alright, we're just gonna tank it. There we go! Pontiff down. Don't forget about the old Demon King. I definitely almost did in this playthrough. He's just like any other similarly shaped demon boss from FromSoft's prior and future work. He does his job, he's fun enough, just kill him quickly or he will try and make you sad by limping like Sif. I'll give him 3 Erd Tree avatars out of 5. Yhorm the Giant. This is one of the better gimmick bosses FromSoft has made. He's DS3's Rykard, or the Storm King. You know, use the cool secret weapon in the arena, the Zweihander in this case, and decimate the boss's giant health pool. This one is all about spectacle. If you do the Onion Knight's quest, he'll even do the fight for you. I'd say he's less fun than Rykard with the special weapon, but way more fun without it. Also, in a classic FromSoft move, the game doesn't explain how to perform the weapon art on the Zweihander. Figuring it out is the most difficult part of the fight. I'll still give Yhorm 4 Rykards out of 5, even though it's a better set piece than it is a boss fight. Aldrich is another solid boss. The arrow spam is annoying, but stay on him and it's not so bad. There are very obvious ties to DS1 in both the arena and the boss itself, which slightly elevates the fight, but you're mainly chasing around a giant disappearing slug and smacking it with a hunk of metal. There's not a really obvious Elden Ring equivalent to this one, so I'll give him 3 annoying Radon arrow attacks out of 5. You know what? Do it, I dare you. I dare you! There we go. The Dancer is a fun fight, despite some awkward roll timing and one really long combo that would be right at home in Elden Ring. I remember a lot of people hated the Dancer upon release, and she does deal some serious damage, but she also doesn't have all that much health, and feels to me like a pretty fair fight. And it's definitely fitting to say you have to stay in rhythm to find success with the Dancer. I'll give her 4 of Morgoth's never-ending combos out of 5. There we go, alright. The Dragonslayer Armor is a good traditional Souls boss fight. Roll through attacks and punish when you can. The boss is aggressive, so stamina management is often the most important factor. There are the annoying angels outside the arena, but they really don't cause too much trouble. There is even a fountain in the middle of the arena that offers a nice break if you want it, and some cheese if you're patient. The Dragonslayer Armor is just solid, so I'll give it 4 Golden Godfreys out of 5. Oceiros is weird. He yells at you about his invisible baby. He's another wet, scaleless, dragon-like creature. He pulls a Vordt, where in Phase 1 he has very kind hitboxes, and Phase 2 can be a bit of a mess if you're not careful. He likes to charge at you, a lot. He can get himself stuck, and definitely doesn't have the strongest AI of the bunch, but he's alright. Due to the repetitive charges and general wonkiness, I'll give him 3 Falling Star Beasts out of 5. Alright, I gotta heal after this. Okay, I guess that's it. Champion Gundyr. Did you ever wonder what it would be like if the tutorial boss had a better, more fun moveset, was way more aggressive, and didn't explode out of his armor when you start to humiliate him? Then Champion Gundyr is the boss for you. I like this one. The setting and lore is really neat, and the parry timing is fairly charitable. You can fight him without parrying, but why would you? It's really fun to reject his attacks with the tiniest shield you can find and riposte for big damage. This one is a pretty straightforward skill check that is trivialized by effective parrying and gets more fun the more you fight him. So I'll give him 4 Margits out of 5. There we go. Lorian and Lothric. This is where, for me, things move from good to great. I'll be honest, I did not enjoy this fight back when I first played DS3, and I did get a little frustrated learning it in this playthrough after all these years, mostly due to the fact that there's not enough time to heal even after perfectly dodging a full combo. Honestly, I'm shocked by how many lagging frames there are between when you finish drinking and when you can dodge the next attack. It is noticeably slower than in Elden Ring, but that's not Lorian and Lothric's fault. Once you learn their combos and openings and stop getting roll caught, this is a really fun fight, and another that is highly dependent on getting in rhythm. It did take several tries to learn, but once I did, it was one of the most satisfying fights in the game. Due to the delayed swings, precise dodging, and projectiles that start as the fight goes on, I'll give this one 5 Radagons out of 5. Bye. Nice. The Ancient Wyvern. It's a dragon, but not really a boss fight. You ignore a bunch of enemies and cruelly kill a mostly non-threatening animal. I'll give it 1 Grail out of 5. The Nameless King, finally! Gwyn's firstborn, and it's not Solaire. Who ever thought it was going to be Solaire? Phase 1 is a slog, due almost completely to the camera. It's difficult to see what's happening, and attack opportunities are limited, especially if you're using a slower weapon. It's still not too difficult to learn though, even when you can't see what's happening. It's just annoying that you'll have to do it again every time you don't beat the king. I'll give Phase 1 1 bad camera out of 5. The actual Nameless King fight, on the other hand, is an absolute blast. It has everything that makes FromSoftware boss fights fun and rewarding. It's a fast-paced dance with a variety of moves to learn and an epic open arena that removes a lot of the randomness and truly tests your mastery of the game's mechanics. You're best served by staying close and being just as aggressive as the king himself. I'll happily give the Nameless King 5 Godfrey the First Elden Lords out of 5. There we go. It was only a matter of time. Like any good playthrough, we'll come back to the final boss after the DLC. So let's start with the Champions Gravetender and Gravetender Greatwolf. I never knew this boss had a name, but apparently that's it. This is the one with the guy and a couple of small wolves, and then the bargain bin Red Wolf of Radagon. As I accurately remembered, the toughest part of this fight is getting down to the arena. NPC enemies are generally pretty exploitable in Dark Souls 3, and the Great Wolf isn't too much of a threat. His moveset is more Moose than Red Wolf, so I'll give this fight 2 average animal bosses out of 5. Sister Friede is an interesting one. Phases 1 and 3 are really fun. She has a fun and challenging moveset that is different from most others you face in the game, due to her weapon of choice being a scythe. She can inflict frostbite and close the gap quickly. Her most dangerous moves are also your greatest opportunities to counter, like when she disappears. If you can locate her quickly, it's free damage. Phase 3 smartly builds on Phase 1, and if these were the only 2 phases of the fight, it would be my 3rd favorite boss in the game. Phase 2 can be a bit of a mess though. This is where you face Friede and her father at the same time. He tries to hit you with a big pot, while she spams frost attacks from a distance until she doesn't. He lights the ground on fire, obscuring her attacks. He likes to charge at you or get stuck in the corner, over and over. Phase 2 is way too RNG heavy for my taste. For me, It slightly drags down what would otherwise be an amazing fight. There's still enough great there that I'll give it 4 annoying duo bosses out of 5. Hey! The Demon Princes. This is another one that I remembered not enjoying years ago, but really appreciated this time around. The bosses have interesting movesets that complement each other nicely, and unlike Vordt, their hitboxes stay on their weapons, making them play more like Elden Ring bosses. Their AI is more finely tuned as well, where one will take a small step back while the other is the aggressor. The arena is also big enough to keep both of them mostly visible, so you don't feel like you're constantly getting hit in the back by whoever you're not attacking. After you beat them both, you get one last fight with a Mega Demon that combines both of their abilities. I also believe the order in which you beat the first two impacts how Phase 3 plays out, adding an extra level of strategy. This is probably how FromSoftware hoped the Twin Gargoyles fight would play out in Elden Ring. It does not, but I'll give this fight 4 Gargs out of 5. Oh, wait! Please die! Please die first! Please die! Please give it to me! Please give it to me! Yes! I think that means we did it! Halflight. This fight is more interesting than it is good. I enjoy the callback to Demon Souls with the ability for this boss to be another player, but I opted for the offline version this time around since I'm judging FromSoftware and not the skills of a rando. Even so, I enjoyed the varied mechanics at play in this fight, quickly taking out the summons while trying to apply enough pressure to the main boss to prevent additional summons. It admittedly pushed me a bit harder than I expected, but still got it first try. I'll give it 3 NPCs out of 5. Darkeater Midir is still my favorite dragon boss FromSoft has ever made, period. And they made a whole bunch of them for Elden Ring, all of which are lesser copies of Midir. Seriously, Midir's moveset is divided up across Elden Ring's dragons, including Placidusax, Fortisax, and many of the open-world dragons. Midir is just that good. He's tough but fair. He has plenty of health and high defenses, but exploitable weaknesses. There are many viable strategies, but I always opted to stay out in front of him, and always aim for the head. This keeps the camera from becoming an issue, and reduces the damage you would take staying underneath and attacking the legs. Since Midir is Dragon Prime, I'll give him 5 Placiforta Lanciaxes out of 5. Yeah! Midir goes down! That's a fun fight. It is. It's a really fun fight. Slave Knight Gael might be my favorite boss in Dark Souls 3 after this playthrough. It's definitely either him or Midir. All 3 phases of the fight are fun. In Phase 1, Gael is a charging animal, not unlike Elden Ring's Beast Clergyman. Then in Phase 2, he stands upright, gains some ranged attacks, actually similar to Gideon, but Gael's attacks are more consistent and fun to avoid and counter. There's also some shared DNA with Malekith here too, the way he stylishly flips up into the air and almost poses at the coolest possible moment before crashing down on top of you. In Phase 3, his attacks even develop a red and black aura or trail reminiscent of Destined Death. I think the most accurate comparison, though, is that he's a more complex and interesting Orphan of Cause from Bloodborne. Almost every aspect of the fight seems well thought out. The setting, the music, how the skybox changes from phase to phase, what each phase says about Gael as a character. He's the fight in DS3 I'd most like to go back to with a variety of different and faster weapons. I could see so many openings where it looked like it would be really satisfying to sneak in hits mid-combo with the Sellsword Twin Blades or some other faster weapon. I do think the random lightning in Phase 3 is somewhat poorly implemented, as it can potentially put you in a no-win scenario even when you do everything right, which doesn't feel great. The uneven terrain can also get you in some awkward positions, but these minor imperfections can't really bring down a fight this good. I'll give Gael 5 The Dark Soul Was In You All Alongs out of 5. Hey! Down goes Gael! Last but not least, there's the Soul of Cinder, the final boss. I don't think he's nearly as good as Midir or Gael, but he's still absolutely one of FromSoftware's best final bosses. Casually, he can be a lot, as he can switch between several different movesets in Phase 1. I think this is a more interesting mechanic than it is fun, especially because some of the movesets are way more fun to fight against than others, and it comes down to RNG, what you're going to get and when. Then he turns into Gwyn, the final boss of Dark Souls 1 after you deplete his initial health bar. He does have one big difference though that I found incredibly frustrating. He can't be parried, which is probably the most common way people defeated the original Gwyn. With a couple of other really good parryable bosses in DS3 like Pontiff and Champion Gundyr, I don't really understand why. I must have tried to parry phase 2 half a dozen times before just giving up and beating him normally, which did make me feel like I was losing my mind a bit. The only other issue I have with the fight is that if you play the DLC and don't intentionally give yourself a level cap, you're going to be pretty overpowered by the time you reach the Soul of Cinder. I don't feel like I really learned this boss like I did Gael or Midir because I didn't have to. All of my issues here are admittedly self-inflicted. Soul of Cinder is still a good final boss and a fitting end to the base game. I'll give him 4 Elden Beast Flesh Swords out of 5. There we go. Oh, I feel bad I complained so much for the final fight. Yeah, Gael was way more fun. Midir was way more fun. I guess that wasn't that bad. That's all of them, I think. So, does Dark Souls 3 have FromSoft's best bosses? I have no idea. This is a completely subjective exercise. With DS3, the highs are extremely high and the lows are far lower than I remembered. I think I prefer the way Elden Ring handles poise for both players and bosses, and probably have more fun overall engaging with Elden Ring's insane mechanical variety. But it's also just a newer game that builds on everything Dark Souls 3 did right. That being said, Midir and Gael are as good or better than anything Elden Ring can throw at you. So, final answer, it doesn't matter. Play them both if you can. At least we can all agree that DS3 theme is an absolute banger, and if you disagree, you have bad taste. Because, you know, online discourse. It's a callback to the intro. See you next time.